All politics is identity politics. Welcome to Identity Politics, everyone. I am Kevin DeAnna, and I am an American. I know I'm an American. You know I'm an American. There's no question to anyone in the world that I'm an American. It would not occur to me to say something like, I'm just as American as everyone else, because it would be absurd. But I want to ask you another question. Is this an American? That, of course, is Vivek Ramaswamy, ran for president, currently the Republican Party's presumptive nominee to be the next governor of Ohio, a race he is currently losing or tied in, according to some polls. Now, occasionally, this guy says something good. During the presidential debates, it was Vivek, after all, who broached the idea of the Great Replacement.
That the Great Replacement theory is not some grand right-wing conspiracy theory, but a basic statement of the Democratic Party's platform.
All right, that takes some guts. Media went nuts at the time, it's true. But is the Great Replacement theory really just about, the Democrats are importing voters? I mean, that's part of it. Maybe even most of it in this country, but it's not just the Democrats who are in favor of this. And it's not just in the United States. If you look at the problems the Labour Party is having in the UK with breakaway Muslim parties and such, it's not even totally clear that on a long enough timeline this leads to guaranteed left-wing victory throughout the left. At least not with like the white social democratic types in charge. It's much more insidious than that. It's much more malevolent than that. And it's about race. It's not about party. Renaud Camus, the French author who actually coined the term the Great Replacement, did not define it in political terms, but in demographic terms. And it's more important than the simple conquest of the state by one party or another. He wrote, in millions of buildings, thousands of neighborhoods, streets, schools, classrooms, and class photographs, athletic teams, hundreds of towns, regions, provinces, and in numerous states, nations, governments, there was one people, and now there is another, or several others. There was a civilization, faces, clothes, habits, lifestyles, ways of being and understanding each other. And now there are others, not necessarily superior, but which have indeed replaced them. And what's really interesting about this, and we can get into who's behind it, who works for it, who financially benefits from it, who politically benefits from it, who argues for it, but to some extent, you get the impression that the arguments just don't even matter. Like there are no actual arguments anymore. At various times, a lot of mainstream European leaders of past and present, Angela Merkel, Emmanuel Macron, Keir Starmer, countless others, they all blatantly say multiculturalism has failed. Mass immigration has been a failed experiment. Keir Starmer, Labour Prime Minister of the UK, said something like, mass immigration has turned us into a nation of strangers. They admit this, but then there's never a rethink of the policy. You can admit that you screwed up, that you destroyed the country, but somehow you can't do anything about it, and you can't even stop making it worse. For some reason, you just have to keep going along with this. There's just no choice. This is just what it is. And they don't even give you a reason. No one believes anymore that these people are going to support the economy or pay for pensions or whatever. They're a net negative. No one thinks they're going to assimilate. No one thinks this is going to lead to greater equality among the classes or something like that. The only argument you can get, if you even call it that, is Piers Morgan talking about how he would trade however many Englishmen for curry. One is reminded of the story of the Bible for trading your birthright for a bowl of slop. But it's not even that. It's this weird nihilism. You can't even identify it. As Camus puts it, this is what he says. We need more of what seems to have not worked. More immigration, more pedagogy, more suburban planning, more multiculturalism and ethnic plurality, more disaster, in short, for it is a disaster. It is because we have not gone far enough. We have not sufficiently believed in what we are doing. Because we have spoiled everything for lack of faith, nostalgia, attachment to outdated values, idealization of the past, and of course, racism. It does not work if we do not add racism. In short, our friends, the friends of the disaster, have a theory they adore, what I would call the conspiracy theory. So, Vivek, in some ways, even when he says something good, like calling out the Great Replacement, he's still triangulating with it. He's still playing games with it. He's still downplaying what's really taking place. It's about the Democratic Party. It's about the liberals. It's about ending freedom. No, it's about ending white people. It's about ending Western civilization, which is the creation of white people. And it's happening everywhere. Because once you talk about it in those terms, what's actually happening, puts a different perspective on all of this because it's about our race. It's not about what party you vote for. And perhaps more importantly, it means that Vivek is not actually opposing the Great Replacement. He himself is part of it. Now, it is a Yuletide miracle. It is a Christmas miracle. This is actually America's newest Christmas tradition. We all remember last year he had his Christmas crash out, rather absurdly saying that the problem is that Americans are watching too many sitcoms instead of studying for spelling bees or whatever, and that's why you can't get a job. That should have ended his political career right then. You know, oh, I'm a working class champion, like stop watching Saved by the Bell and study for a spelling bee. But like somehow the Republican Party was like, this is great. Let's make him the next governor. Somehow, like, this passes for political wisdom here. But it's Christmas again, which means that the tradition is renewed. Vivek is once again crashing out. And while the subcontinent seems to have had its back on X, actual Americans are not so friendly. So he posts on X, quote, American identity isn't a scalar quality that varies based on your ancestry. It's binary. Either you're an American or you're not. You are an American if you believe in the rule of law and freedom of conscience and freedom of expression, in colorblind meritocracy, in the U.S. Constitution, in the American dream, and if you are a citizen who swears exclusive allegiance to our nation. That's the truth, and it's why I wrote this piece. And just look at the true blue Americans coming to support him, like Evok Roy and Renu Magura Kashi. I think, you know, her ancestors signed the Declaration of Independence. And who can forget Rajiv Sharma, who so bravely led Virginia against the British, like during the invasion. And, you know, if you can't trust these guys to tell you what your country is based on, who can you trust? I mean, you can certainly trust Vivek, right? Just don't ask too many questions about what happened to that Alzheimer's drug he was promoting when he was working in the pharmaceutical industry, how he made his money. Don't ask too many questions about that, but you can still trust him. You know, he's here, right? We have to deal with him now. President Trump endorsed him, and we have to deal with this guy now. And he's going to tell us what it means to be an American. So where does he go? He turns to that great journal of American right-wing thought, the New York Times, and tells us, what is an American? And he says, quote, there are two competing visions now emerging on the American right, and they are incompatible. One vision of American identity is based on lineage, blood, and soil. Inherited attributes matter most. The purest form of an American is a so-called heritage American, one whose ancestry traces back to the founding of the United States or earlier. This view was now popularized by the Groyper right, a rapidly ascendant online movement that argues for the creation of a white-centric identity. Now, already he's lost the plot. I mean, Groypers obviously care about white identity, but it's not the Groypers who have been pushing this idea that colonial old stock Americans are more American than anyone else. Like Groypers, if it means anything, means you support Nick Fuentes, Catholic, which tends not to go well with like pre-colonial stock Americans, generally think Jewish power and the relationship with Israel, the most of critical issues. Race matters, but it's not the end-all, be-all political issue. Like that's objectively what they are. So right off the bat, he's creating this imaginary straw man to attack, only because he knows like New York Times readers have vaguely heard of Groypers and Nick Fuentes. And so like that's the enemy he wants. And so he says, well, these are the guys that think that unless you were in the sons or daughters of the American Revolution, you're not American. That's like not their position at all. The graphic you actually see being passed around in the American right is this, and it generally comes from other people on the right. Lineage, blood, soil, oh, these things don't matter. Well, no, they do actually. That's what defines the nation. That's what defines any nation. Inherited attributes do matter. That is what a nation is. I think it was Daniel Patrick Moynihan, senator, who said, a nation is defined by people who think they have a common ancestry. And it's the largest group of people possible that can hold to that belief. Like that's a workable definition of what a nation is. And here's the key. What do we find day after day, week after week? All the people who love to tell us that we're all Americans, that anyone can be an American, that it's a universal identity. All of these people have very strong and real and primal ties to their actual countries, to the places defined by blood and soil and lineage, the places they actually care about. Ilhan Omar in Somalia, Ben Shapiro in Israel, even Dinesh D'Souza in India, Mr. Abstract Individualism himself. He's very touchy on the subject of India. So the very same people who want to cheapen American identity have a real identity that they care about. It's just somewhere else, but we're not allowed to have one. Pat Buchanan wrote an influential column years ago called Nation or Notion, and he said, Every true nation is the creation of a unique people. Indeed, if America is an ideological nation grounded no deeper than the sandy soil of abstract ideas, she will not survive the storms of this century any more than the Soviet Union survived the last, when the regime, party, army, and police that held the ideological nation together lost the will to keep it together. The USSR broke down upon the fault lines of nationality, faith, and culture. True nations, held together not by any political creed, but by patriotism, emerged from the rubble. This is where we're heading. The blank slate is not a thing. It is not real. It is not true. Belief in it is objectively wrong. Holding to that mistaken belief does not make you moral. It either makes you an idiot, or, in Vivek's case, it just makes you a cynical salesman, like hawking another failed drug. But let's see what this huckster has to say next. The alternative, and in my view, correct, vision of American identity is based on ideals. And then he says what he tweeted out before. Americanness isn't a scalar quality that varies based on your ancestry. It's binary. Either you're an American or you're not. You're an American if you believe in the rule of law, freedom of conscience, freedom of expression, colorblind meritocracy, the U.S. Constitution, and the American dream. And if you are a citizen who swears exclusive allegiance to our nation, unquote. Give him 1 point. You're either an American or you're not. I'll agree on that. But you're an American if you believe in these certain ideas. Most Americans, really all American presidents, up to John F. Kennedy, and who knows how far his egalitarianism really extended, didn't believe in all of that. The founders explicitly said that immigration should be limited to whites only. One American statesman after another said that America was founded as a white man's country, that this constitutional order was explicitly for whites, and that is what provided our genius. In recent days on this show, we talked about how many American presidents and leaders wanted to send blacks back to Africa, including Lincoln, how Jefferson excluded blacks out of the political order, how Calhoun didn't want to annex Mexico because we don't want Indians in the polity, how Teddy Roosevelt thought it was such a great thing that you had the white conquest not just of North America, but Australia and even Siberia. Are just none of these people American? But Vivek is. Take another example. This guy, Albert J. Beveridge, progressive American senator from the early 20th century, one of my all-time favorites, one of the leading proponents of American empire, Spanish-American War, annexation of the Philippines. What did he have to say about what America really was? He famously said, Americans were spawned by the most masterful race of the world and characterize our westward expansion from Jefferson to Grant, as he put it, as driven by the Saxon within them. In one speech, he claimed, we are of the ruling race of the world. Ours is the blood of government. Ours is the heart of dominion. Ours the brain and the genius of administration. Remember that we do but what our fathers did. We but pitch the tents of liberty further westward, further southward. We only continue the march of the flag. When speaking about the right to govern the Philippines, which he said should belong to us forever, he frankly denied that all peoples are capable of self-government. The Declaration of Independence does not forbid us to do our part in the regeneration of the world. If it did, the Declaration would be wrong. Just as the Articles of Confederation, drafted by these very same men who signed the Declaration, was found to be wrong. The Declaration has no application to the present situation. It was written by self-governing men for self-governing men. It was written by men who, for a century and a half, had been experimenting in self-government on this continent and whose ancestors for hundreds of years before had been gradually developing toward that high and holy estate. The Declaration applies only to people capable of self-government. How dare any man prostitute this expression of the very elect of self-governing peoples to a race of Malay children of barbarism, schooled in Spanish methods and ideas. And you who say the Declaration applies to all men, how dare you deny its application to the American Indian? And if you deny it to the Indian at home, how dare you grant it to the Malay abroad? Good point. Was he just not American? Were any of these people just not American? Nobody was American, actually, until 1965 or so, at which point, just by pure coincidence, it all kind of fell apart. But don't worry, Vivek Ramaswamy is here. He'll tell us what your country means. And what about these ideals, after all? Oh, if you believe in these ideological presuppositions that, nobody believed in until like 30 years ago, you can be an American. No surprise, here's Ben Shapiro arguing for the same kind of idea.
This is the thing that I think really matters about the Constitution and the Declaration, particularly, which are, the sort of secular hallmark of Americanism. The reason that that's important is because if you look at how the left treats these documents, they treat them as an outgrowth of whiteness and therefore bad. right? They make the argument that these documents are white people documents and they were written by white people for the preservation. I mean, this is Nicole Hannah-Jones's entire argument in the 1619 Project, right? Is that all these ideas are just an outgrowth of domineering patriarchal whiteness, and therefore they are inherently bad. And so when you grant the argument that they are, quote unquote, an outgrowth of whiteness, as opposed to an outgrowth of great human brains coming from a particular culture, for sure, and coming from a particular place, but applicable to people who can, in fact, join the team, then the country can't grow in any other way, and you can't create a definition of Americanism that isn't going to end up. First of all, I'm not sure I see the pragmatic solution here. I think that you're basically throwing out the baby with the bathwater. It seems to me that we can absolutely hold by a creedal country and keep people out we don't want here on the basis of that creed. Whereas I think that if you go to a sort of more heritage American ancestry-based system for determining Americanism, first of all, you will never win an election. Just on a pragmatic level, there aren't enough people who are like that. And I mean, the number of descendants of the Mayflower is a very, very small percentage of the population of the United States. It just is.
Never change, Ben Shapiro. All right, let's break my own rule here. Consider this argument in good faith. We shouldn't, but let's do it just as an ideological exercise. Are we actually doing what he says? Are we actually keeping people out of the country on the basis they don't agree with the creed? I mean, we have countless examples on video where people say, look, during the naturalization oath, when I reject loyalty to any other nation, potentate, or prince, I was lying. I still believe in my real country. Do we denaturalize these people for lying, for violating the oath? We have members of Congress identifying on camera as members of other nations, saying they're looking after their interests. They're essentially foreign lobbyists for their tribe. Do we denaturalize them? Do we kick them out of office? The rule of law. 132 Democrats in Congress support a bill that would make it essentially impossible for ICE to deport any illegal immigrants. The biggest debate in America today is whether we can get rid of all these illegals. And guess what? Almost every media outlet, almost every big businessman, about half of the Republican Party, and every single Never Trumper are out there saying, actually, we shouldn't deport the illegals. We can't deport the illegals. It's un-American to deport the illegals. We need them doing the cheap labor. They don't believe in the rule of law. Do we get to denaturalize them? Do we get to deport them? How many Americans at this point do not believe in free speech? Including, by the way, the people at the very outlet that Ramaswamy chose to publish this thing at the New York Times. Do not believe in the right to bear arms. I'd love to pull the New York Times on that. Do not believe in the American dream of free market capitalism or whatever, if you want to bring this sorts of thing out. Do we keep these people out? Any of them? And by the way, especially as we have birthright citizenship, can we kick their kids out? Can we kick out the family members they bring in thanks to chain migration? Do we kick out the people, the foreigners even, whose entire political activism in this country is campaigning against the United States of America as it has historically existed? No, we don't do any of those things. And Vivek knows that. And Ben Shapiro knows that. They're just making these arguments to flatter naive and mostly older conservatives into giving their country away. This is all cynical. You don't have to buy any of this. They know exactly what they're doing. Because here's the thing. If America is defined by ideals, then we can get rid of the people who don't believe in the ideals, right? Like if you don't believe in the ideals, then you're not an American and you don't get to have a say, which means we absolutely have to have an ideological test and a way of enforcing it. Is that what they're proposing? Oh, no, because that would be anti-American too. Okay. So they don't mean any of this. This is all just noise. And even if they did, what's to just prevent people from lying? I mean, we know people are lying during the naturalization oath. Apparently nothing happens to them. So why would they just keep lying? A nation, like a race, and the two are pretty related, is an extended family. And because traits actually are inherited, yeah, like your family tends to share common interests, especially before now when you had this like vast media empire turning people against each other. You used to be able to take a lot of this stuff for granted. But let's say you don't even have the same beliefs. Let's say you're not looking forward to Christmas dinner this year. Does that mean they're not really your family anymore? That you no longer have any obligations? Oh, my son doesn't think like tax cuts are the greatest thing ever. I guess I just don't have to take care of him anymore. Is that how it works? No. Identity is mostly unchosen. The idea that can be otherwise is one of the great lies of liberalism, and membership in a nation is inherent and essential. It just is. You don't choose it. What's chosen is of very little importance. It's not a question of being a good person or whatever. You are this thing or you are not. And that is what allows for a certain tolerance within that group, because you don't have to have an ideological policing system like universal nations like the Soviet Union have to have. And incidentally, apropos of nothing, this is something Vivek himself posted on X about a year ago. I'm just going to read this one part of it. Suppose a white man calls himself black, wears blackface, speaks in a racially stereotypical accent. I doubt many liberals would argue that this white man deserves to be acknowledged as black, or that affirmative action programs at colleges and corporations should treat him as one. Instead, they'd either call him a racist or else try to get him psychiatric help. The same logic applies for a biological man who claims to be a woman. Well, you know what? I'd argue this applies to trans Americans like him too. It doesn't matter how many times he puts on a cowboy hat. This is just a delusion. He needs psychiatric care. And he also needs deportation. But, we're having fun with this guy. Let's let him tell him some more, like what an American is. To return to the column, he says, quote, as Ronald Reagan quipped, you can go to live in France, but you can't become a Frenchman. But anyone from any corner of the world can come to live in the United States and become an American, no matter your ancestry. If you wait your turn and obtain citizenship, you are every bit as American as a Mayflower descendant, as long as you subscribe to the creed of the American founding and the culture that was born of it. Just don't ask too questionably what the American founders had to say about race. This is what makes American exceptionalism possible. Now, again, leave aside, I don't believe in any of this. And even Reagan was cracking jokes with Richard Nixon about African leaders being unable to wear shoes correctly and how you can't deal with these people. His only meaningful policy legacy was giving away California. We need to stop quoting Ronald Reagan like this guy did something right. But forget all of that. This isn't even true of the rest of the world anymore. What are we told, after all? Any random African can now be French, can be German, can be Irish, can be Italian. This kind of ideology applies to the entire West now, not just America. And that's because what they call American exceptionalism is not exceptional at all. It's just nihilism. It's just bad faith arguments to deconstruct the country itself, and now the entire civilization itself. What he's saying doesn't even apply anymore. What is Vivek really concerned about, after all? He doesn't like people calling him names online. He thinks too many Hill staffers are watching Nick Fuentes. This is what he actually says. This is what he writes. There aren't enough people criticizing, as he puts it, the new identity politics on the right. But here's the problem. All politics is identity politics. This column, arguing for universal principles so he can get through the door, and which is being praised by all his co-ethnics, is itself an exercise in identity politics. And performative condemnation isn't going to get the left, which at this point is just a conglomeration of tribes of hostile foreigners, to abandon their most effective political weapon. Vivek claims, he says he's doing this for our own good. He claims this pattern of not condemning identity politics eerily mirrors the hesitance of prominent Democrats to criticize woke excess in the run-up to the 2024 presidential election, even though most Democratic voters clearly never believe that math is racist or that hard work or the written tradition are hallmarks of whiteness. I suggest he talk to more educated Democrats. That's a big part of why Kamala Harris lost in such spectacular fashion. If the post-Trump GOP makes the same mistake with our own identitarian fringe, we will meet a similar fate, unquote. But Harris didn't lose because she was too woke. Do you follow the left? Did you follow the way they talk about her? They didn't see her as one of them. They thought she was a moderate. She was picked by Biden, after all. I mean, yeah, she was an incompetent candidate, but that's not why she lost, fundamentally. She lost because she couldn't bring herself to criticize Joe Biden. Joe Biden, who you remember, was the moderate candidate who can win some white working class votes away from Trump, and there was probably something to that. He was pushed on the Democrats. He stayed in the race for too long. But the most important thing was his record on inflation, on the economy, on affordability. And when Kamala Harris was asked, what would you do differently than he did? She said nothing. She said, I can't think of anything. She said that on The View. That's why she lost. The Trump campaign was running that as an ad, her quote. And guess what? That's the situation President Trump finds himself in right now. Now, there are a lot of great things that President Trump has done, not least completely shutting down illegal immigration. As an aside, real quick, you might have seen that he spoke last night, and he says this in passing, but it's a huge deal.
For the past 7 months, 0 illegal aliens have been allowed into our country, a feat which everyone said was absolutely impossible. Do you remember when Joe Biden said that he needed Congress to pass legislation to help close the border? He was always blaming Congress and everyone else. As it turned out, we didn't need legislation. We just needed a new president. We inherited the worst border anywhere in the world, and we quickly turned it into the strongest border in the history of our country. In other words, in a few short months, we went from worst to best.
But here's the thing, and I say this as somebody who's inclined to be charitable toward President Trump, then the problem is essentially solved. So people lose interest. What are people actually concerned about? Their inability to afford a house, to get an entry-level job, to get a decent wage. And you know what's behind a lot of that? Unlimited legal immigration, not least from H-1B workers from India, not least what the tech companies that he's cozying up to are lobbying for, and the fact that you basically need an ethnic cartel behind you to get an entry-level job anywhere. Oh, this is hurting the Democrats. Read the room, man. The Democrats have romped in every single special election recently. Currently, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who I don't think anyone would call an anti-woke Democrat, is outpolling J.D. Vance to be the next president of the United States. So what are you talking about? Oh, my friendly advice about how to save the GOP. You're not winning the governor's race in Ohio. I could win the governor's race in Ohio, and I don't live in Ohio. At least I'm an American. But I'll say this, he does say something true. He sees some of the problems, and he says, quote, many voters under 30 believe they will never be able to afford a home, correct. They're often saddled with college debt, correct. And absent dramatic policy interventions, Social Security will most likely be curtailed before they ever receive benefits, if we ever do. They are understandably bitter about it. Their rising sense of economic insecurity conspires with pent-up psychosocial angst. Depression and anxiety are more prevalent among members of Generation Z than in prior American generations. I mean, I could do without the psychoanalytical bit, but that's all mostly true. But then he loses us because he says, in the absence of a shared national identity, okay, you've got something there, they're turning to tribalism and victimhood instead. Groiperism on the right. Zohan Mondami-infused socialism on the left. No. National identity is tribalism. I shouldn't have to spell this out. This is basic stuff. And I wouldn't expect you to understand it because you're not part of the nation, but think of the way you feel about India. Now maybe you get it. And this like groiperism, which he's basically invented in his own head. And it's not like what the movement actually is when you look at it. Oh, and Mondami-infused socialism, like this is just a straw man. Mondami-infused socialism, what does that even mean? What was his campaign really about? It showed the potency of identity politics, that anti-white resentment wins, particularly when you don't put up anything substantive to oppose it. So what does Vivek want us to do in light of all this? He says, first, conservative leaders should condemn, without hedging, Groiper transgression. So here we are. Back to the old conservative movement tradition. If we just disavow the people to our right, if we just complain enough, if we just go to the left and say, I'm one of the good ones. I'm not like those mean guys over there. I'm nice. I'm polite. I'm housebroken. They'll pat us on the head and they'll let us participate. This is the same thing we've been told for 75 years. This is the same exact thing that's led us to this point. And once again, people lecturing us about who has no place in the conservative movement. This is especially rich from somebody who has no place in the country and knows it. He says it should be acceptable on the right to criticize U.S. aid to Israel or immigrant visas. Oh, thank you for allowing us to have this be acceptable, to criticize these things. What happened to like free speech is a fundamental norm that defines American identity itself. Actually, what he meant was that some Indian guy gives you permission to like lightly dance around the margins of certain issues. But he continues, it is downright unacceptable to spew poison towards Jews, Indians, or any other ethnic group. Really? What about whites? What about the poison spread against us in media and education by the political system? No, not a word. But he bravely notes that his opponent in Ohio is Jewish, and he'll defend her from anti-Semitism. What a hero. What else does he say? Drive down home prices by eliminating local land use restrictions to increase housing supply, reduce property tax burdens by making bloated local governments more efficient. Reduce electric bills by speeding up permitting timelines for new power plants and natural gas extraction. And then he gets into Eric Klein and Derek Thompson's case for abundance and says the GOP could take some of these ideas. Fine, like this list of little policy measures. Oh, we're just going to make things more efficient and reduce like property taxes. Yeah, it's just that simple. And like property taxes, the problem is that people can't buy the property. The problem is that basically anyone under 35 would love to be in a position where they have to worry about property taxes, but they don't. And like, yeah, cheap, it's not that all these are like bad ideas. Like, yes, cheap energy is important, but what is a governor going to do there short term? And like, oh, we're just going to build more houses? No, it's not a question of we need to build more houses. And by the way, we need to destroy single family neighborhoods so we can just turn everything into a giant slum. There's one critical thing that's missing here. One word that you don't see in this. That's right. Deportations. Reducing the supply of foreigners who are subsidized to buy houses. But we can't do that because that might make investors mad. So it's better to turn everything into a slum like Mumbai where you just build more and more houses. What else does he say? Third, create broad-based participation in wealth generation from stock market gains. In the AI era, it is conceivable to envision a future with stock market outperformance even in the face of stagnating wages and job losses. If every kid legally born in the United States receives an American dream birthright in the form of $10,000 invested in the S&P 500, every young American would become a millionaire by age 60, assuming a modest 8% annual return, which falls below historical 5, 10, 20, and 40 years averages. So, we're just going to make everybody a millionaire. It's not even that like this in itself is such a bad idea. Although there's more to get into it and everything else, but it's not a catch-all. Like we all acknowledge that the stock market has been going up while wages are not keeping pace with inflation. People don't have the opportunity for real careers. And the way to get around that is not, well, here's free money, just throw it in the stock market. Like at some point, the economy has to produce things. At some point, people have to have actual careers. Like that's the problem. And it's not a question, to go back to what he said a year ago, of, oh, just work harder. Oh, just study more. The ladders have been pulled up behind people. If you're white, no one cares. If you don't have an ethnic lobby at your back, you can't get a job. Oh, but don't complain. That's victimhood. That's tribalism. That's racism. Well, yeah, that's how you get ahead in multicultural, multiracial America. And like in giving people free money to invest in the stock market under the premise that it just goes up forever, infinitely, is not going to work. And what, by the way, are you going to prevent people from cashing it in when they need it? Is it going to work like Social Security, where we just end up with a kind of another pyramid scheme long term that's untenable? Because I guarantee if you give people this money, what 50% of the American people are going to do is the minute they turn 18, they're just going to cash in the $10,000 and spend it on Kratom or whatever. Are you going to prevent that? Oh, well, you don't believe in self-government then. And this is the last thing. And this is where you see just sort of how casually he treats these things. That, again, this underlying nihilism that you see at the root of all this stuff. He says, quote, fourth, provide America the shared national project we badly need. Well, what is the national project? America has a greater purpose in the world than what we've embodied thus far in the 21st century, okay? What is the greater purpose? Americans of all stripes long to be reminded of it through a modern-day equivalent of the Apollo mission. So, like, we need a mission, we need a purpose, but I don't know what it is. Perhaps it's establishing a base on the moon to achieve nuclear fusion in a way that powers the creation of artificial intelligence without negative externalities and constraints on Earth. Perhaps it's something else of similar scale and ambition. Such a project could serve as a much-needed catalyst to revive high-quality math and science education in America by elevating standards in public schools, expanding educational choice, and much more. What the hell are you talking about? Oh, we need a national purpose. Let's bring back the dinosaurs and ride them into battle and bring freedom to Venezuela. I mean, what are we doing here? What nonsense is this? And we're going to do that. I see him smuggling in educational choice in the public schools. No, the problem with the public schools is not the lack of educational choice. The problem is that a lot of these schools, since the civil rights movement, which we all have to pretend is the greatest thing ever, are basically non-white zoos where if you're a white kid, you can't go there. Like, the problem with the public schools, it's not just with the administration and the standards and the way they are run, although I acknowledge that's part of it. If you break down average performance by race, whites are still outperforming most of the rest of the world. The reason the schools suck is because we're running out of white people. As Robert Weisberg wrote a whole book about it, bad students, not bad schools. We are importing people who can't learn. We're saddled with our old slave class that mostly can't learn. As I'm sure not a lot of young students now know from this population, but it doesn't matter how big the number is. If you multiply it by 0, the answer is always 0. It doesn't matter how much you throw at them, but they vote. And they can vote themselves a livelihood at our expense. And so they're just going to keep doing that. And so even the little bit that they're capable of through reform, you're never going to get because people benefit from the existing system. What are you going to do about that? Are you going to disenfranchise them? No. You want educational choice. Well, what is that? Educational choice is code for we're going to have the government subsidize more minorities to go to the mostly white schools that white parents have to work jobs they hate so they can move far away from the collapsing cities so they can send their kids to a school where they're not going to get the crap kicked out of them. And we're going to bust like more minorities into this. Like, this is the grand plan. And like somehow this is downstream of like nuclear fusion dinosaur parks on Mars. Like, what the hell are we talking about here? Are we going to the problem is that we have bad human capital coming into this country and we keep importing more. Are you going to deport them? No. Then we still have the problem. And like vague national purpose isn't going to do anything about it. And what is he really talking about? Like, oh, we need a big national purpose. That's just another way of doing the civic identity bit. We're just going to get everybody involved. Oh, you need a strong culture. You need a big mission. You need a big empire, whatever. No. The strong culture, the coherent national identity, the racial bond. These are the things you need before you can do big things. When we did go to the moon, it was white men who took us there. It wasn't a grab bag of Indians and God knows what else. And it wasn't, by the way, the types of guys who dot every I and cross every T. It was like lunatic test pilots who were the first astronauts and guys who broke all the rules and like eccentric geniuses. Those were the guys who created America's greatest accomplishments. It's not the guys who like cheat on standardized tests like Vivek here. And he concludes, and he just kind of just ends the column. The uplifting truth is that the solution to identity politics needn't be one camp defeating the other. People who say that are just saying you need to lay down your arms, but instead achieving together a national escape velocity to more promising terrain, unquote. And that's how he just ends. Pretty underwhelming. And the problem here is that there is no solution to identity politics any more than there's a solution to politics itself. It just is. Politics is a struggle for power. It's just constant. It's part of the condition of being alive. It never ends. There are winners and there are losers. And he wants whites to be losers. It's that simple. Our job is to pay the way for everybody else, flatter him, quietly hand over power. No, we don't have to go along with any of this. We owe no obligation to any of these people. Some time ago, Sam Hyde covered this rather well.
That I don't care about what an Indian says. I'm not willing to have a discussion about the definition of what an American is. I'm not interested in hearing somebody else's proposal for what an American is. Everybody knows what an American is.
And I really want to play the whole clip because the whole clip is just perfect. But what you should actually do is you should go to Sam Hyde's account, you should subscribe, you should donate, you should support his content because it's one of the all-time greats. And you should watch the whole thing there. The larger point here is that even opening up certain topics to debate at all is the losing move. Orrin McIntyre in The Total State writes about how even the mere process of dialectic or discussion inexorably moves things to the left. He says, quote, once the core values of a social organization, like a nation, are up for debate, they are over. Once the foundational axioms of an organization have entered the realm of open discussion, it will always and inevitably move to the left. Any organization that has not secured its foundation against this dialectical erosion will fall to the relentless forces of entropy. Anyone who is not defending, maintaining, and gatekeeping the things they love and care about will watch them decay and eventually be destroyed, unquote. And this fundamentally includes the question of what it is to be an American. we know what an American is. Vivek knows what an American is. To engage in the debate at all, to open up the question as to whether Thomas Jefferson is not an American because he wasn't sufficiently colorblind, but Vivek Ramaswamy is, to even entertain that in your head for a second is to lose the debate. To accept the debate is to accept the premise. And thus, as Sam Hyde said back then, we're not doing that. You're getting called a slur. Politics right now is not just about who is an American. We know what an American is, and we know race is a big part of that. I'd argue the most important part of that, but that's only the beginning. The real issue is we, actual Americans, have zero representation in what is supposed to be our country. Unlike all these other people, this is the only country we have. This is the only one we have an interest in. And securing our sovereignty, our independence, our collective self-interest is what all our efforts should be focused on. Step one is asserting our identity as a people. And that does not include Vivek Ramaswamy. And he knows it. Coming up, we've got one of the biggest voices on X, Lyndon Perry, better known as I, Hypocrite. He joins us now to discuss a piece he just wrote on the Substack on the essential importance of race, why I'm a racist, and why you should be too. Maybe Vivek can read this one. I've been looking forward to this. Check it out. I, Hypocrite is one of the strongest voices on the white right on X, definitely some of the best content out there, and is also hosting a number of live streams. But what a lot of you guys might not know is he's also got a Substack, and he just published a very interesting new piece called Why I'm a Racist and You Should Be Too. And I wanted to bring him on to talk about it today. Thank you so much for joining. I actually had a lot of fun with that article. I thought it was really well reasoned.
Thank you. And man, I'm embarrassed now, but is it Kenny? Is what?
No, just go with Kevin. I mean, this is the essential problem with like the fake name and everything is the James Kirkpatrick thing. And this, we can get into it when we get into X. I'm plotting to, get rid of the stupid pen name that I've been carrying around for 15 years. But if you got a blue check and you want to change like your account name, it becomes a complete disaster. So we'll see what happens.
Kevin. So that's embarrassing because I was like, I still think of you.
I don't go by my own name on Twitter. It comes with the territory.
So anyway, thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure.
So tell me a little bit about the article and what prompted it. I mean, because you're not really known as like a writer, but obviously maybe you should be.
I don't know about that. I mean, my Substack bio just says I'm not a word cell. Like I don't think of myself as a writer, but it is an interesting story actually how it came about because I had done this No Jumper podcast, which I talked about in the article. This was like a kind of a big podcast. And the guy started off by being like, you're a racist. And I was like, yes, I am. There was fallout in my personal life from that going out. So my wife's sister, my sister-in-law, she saw that and they kind of have like disowned us as family now. So they come to Thanksgiving, they're not coming to Christmas, all this stuff. And my wife Allison was very upset about this, and she kept saying, I'm gonna write like a letter to my sister and I need your help. And I kept saying to her, you're wasting your time.
Right.
There's no combination of words that makes a shit lib turn to a racist. It doesn't exist. If that would be like the holy grail of racism.
Like I've done it.
Yeah, exactly.
Found the forbidden text. Like all our problems are solved.
So I kept telling her like, it's pointless, don't bother. But it kind of planted the seed of like, well, if I was going to try, what would I do? So that's what the article, it was sort of an attempt of, how do you convince somebody who isn't going to be convinced by statistics? And I don't have any illusions that it would actually work, but that was sort of a thought experiment basically of what would I write if I was trying.
Well, I guess the most obvious thing that I think people are going to start right off the bat is if you're trying to convince somebody of something, a lot of times these sort of scare words, they sort of function as like a way to whip up like the social autoimmune system, like Nazi, Hitler, racist. Like you see it, the defenses are up. They're not going to listen to anything you say. So I suppose the most obvious objection right off the bat is why try to reclaim the word racist itself? Why not just use a different word?
Yeah, I feel like it's necessary because every solution that is going to be any kind of real solution is going to meet the definition of racism, if we're being honest, right? So I mentioned in the article, there's this Elijah Schaffer poll he puts up where he says, is it racist to not want to live around black people?
Right.
88% voted no, with like thousands of votes, right? And I'm looking at that, like, of course it's racist. That's like the
yeah, right.
It's the like most like basic core of racism. Like, as a racist, you don't want to live around the races you don't like. That's like racism 101. You know what I mean? So, but people twist themselves to avoid that label because of how much stigma it is. And it's like, if we can't just say like, yeah, I'm a little racist, then I don't see how we're ever going to have these solutions, because otherwise it's going to just be like, well, no, it's not racist to not want to live around black people. And they're going to say, yes, it is. You're right. So if you concede that racism is a moral failing, you're kind of fucked.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, this is, I think, essentially true, where they think that racist just turns into bad person. Like, that's what it actually means. And it's like, well, no, I mean, you're holding to certain opinions about the nature of reality, and they're either true or they're not. It has nothing to do with like whatever code of ethics you've invented yourself. I mean, that's what's so strange about the current time is people will say, well, race shouldn't exist. And you're like, well, it does. And it's like, well, that makes you a bad person. It's like, how does being ignorant make you a better person?
Sorry, I just realized I haven't like tweeted this out or anything. That's
all right. Don't worry about it.
Let me do that real quick.
Go ahead.
Oh wait, is this on Rumble?
No. It's going up later. So we're doing it live right now.
Okay,
yeah, we're fine.
All right. After it goes out, send me the link and I'll tweet it.
I will. But yeah, I mean, this is like the fundamental problem, and I think that this idea that we've essentially been morally disarmed into adopting basically an ideology that has no resemblance to our actual interests, but also just to the way reality functions. I mean, how can you solve any problem unless you get rid of that moral dilemma first? I mean, this is basically where we're at.
Yeah, and I've been kind of working on this for years, which is why, like, I started using that term years ago to describe myself. People have been using other terms for a long time: racialist, race realist.
Right.
It all means the same thing, and I just thought, let's stop beating around the bush. So it is an uphill battle, but the way I look at it is like, Elon Musk has been kind of on like another tear the last week or so. I don't know if you've noticed, but like he's like really talking about anti-white stuff. You had this Compact Mag thing. He tweeted this compilation of like anti-white articles. It was like a really good, I don't know if you saw that tweet.
Yep.
But so he's doing this, and it's like that kind of stuff 5 or 6 years ago, that was really that was really like edgy, that was really controversial. And so the way I see it is like, if I put out this article, I'm racist, there's a YouTube video that's going out today as well. It's the same thing, the same essay. It's the kind of thing that like people might not openly, publicly embrace it now, but just give it a few years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Give it a few years, give it 5 or 6 years, and we'll have Elon Musk being like, yeah, I'm racist. That's
give it. It sounds crazy, but I mean, you could see that happening. I mean, the idea that you would have him, I mean, when you look at what normal conservatives are tweeting out now when it comes to race, it's basically what American Renaissance would have done a decade ago.
Right.
I mean, in some states, it actually presents like a challenge for American Renaissance, because it's like, if you do sort of like the basic introductory arguments, like you're going to get that from Breitbart at this point. So it's like, well, what's the next step? And exactly. I think what we're seeing on X is like, okay, now we're seeing what the next step is. It's like, how do you go from these people are anti-white, so how do we justify being pro-white?
Yeah.
But I mean, have you seen X is obviously, it's got its drawbacks, it's got its advantages. Certainly there's nothing else like it. Obviously we would not be where we are now were it not for X, were it not for Elon Musk, for all his failings. He's given us a huge gift on this. But I mean, as we were talking about a little bit before we went on, there are some problems with the platform. I mean, I think the monetization program at this point has been a complete bust. Obviously, the clickbait and the conspiracy stuff has just driven out a lot of good content. What do you see your role is on the platform, and what are you trying to accomplish with the kind of content you put up?
Well, I basically run a meme page, and like I've been doing that way for years. I put right, and my reach is like massively down, and that seems to be across the board for meme pages for the most part. It seems like they've decided they don't want that kind of content, which I'm sort of like, I guess like people have called, like say like, oh, you just post slop, you just steal content. This, like, I've been hearing that for years. So I do know there's kind of a sentiment from people who don't like that. It was also, though, it was like very popular when the reach wasn't restricted. Like it's this weird, there's this weird sort of paradox of everybody says they hate the low effort content, but also everybody wants to engage with it and they think it's funny and they want to like comment on it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so I was like very successful doing that especially when Elon first took over and he just opened it up and he just said, okay, we're just going to even the playing field. I gained hundreds of thousands of followers in that first like year and a half or so, and made decent cash too from the creator thing. Now it's like I feel like I'm just like in like the twilight zone or like the exile zone with my reach. So I kind of have like, I don't try as hard anymore, but I am sort of also like trying to adapt my approach to Twitter to actually writing tweets instead of just posting memes, because it just seems like that's what they want. But
I mean, that does raise a certain question in terms of, is it, I mean, it is ultimately, it is just must thing. But then it raises the question, are we all basically being dragooned into putting out whatever kind of content Musk wants and just what Musk wants? And if that's true, like, where is he taking us? Because obviously we've seen everybody's talking about Vivek crashing out on Christmas, but of course, Elon has crashed out too, especially over the issue of H-1B visas. I mean, we all are very grateful for what he did, but at the same time, I don't think any of us are like so deluded as to think that he's totally on board.
Yeah, and Vivek right now there's a whole new thing where he's doing the whole everyone's American if they have it's so this is exactly like the Sam Hyde. I've been meaning to go and like clip the Sam Hyde thing where he says, "Oh, you want to debate what an American is? No, I'm calling you a slur." So I gotta go find that and like tweet it at Vivek. But in terms of like I don't know. Maybe I'm naive. I kind of give Elon the benefit of the doubt a lot. And I think that I do think that they're just trying to make the platform good. Maybe that's naive. Like, I know a lot of our guys are down in reach right now. Well, it seems like all the big accounts are complaining about it, though. So I do think they've maybe tried to even the playing field where your follower count doesn't matter that much. And maybe they've overcorrected in that direction, because what's the point of like gaining followers? But I am giving them the benefit of the doubt that they're just trying to make the platform good. And I don't like to chase algorithms. I've always been like, when it comes to the content I make, especially when I'm making video content, it's like, would I like this?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So that's always been my like guiding star. So I like memes. So that's why I got into memes on Facebook. Like I follow a whole bunch of meme channels. I love to like scroll and just look and be like, oh, that's funny. That's funny. So I don't want to like start, because it seems like there's a certain kind of page, like the breaking news Twitter guys.
Oh, you know God, it's unbearable, dude.
It seems
every time it says breaking, I just immediately assume this is BS.
Well, and so and like those guys are doing really good with their reach for the like America First posts or AF posts, right? That's like a decent page. I'm not like
that's like, I mean, they post stuff that they at least have a source from. Usually the post after is like where they're getting it from. They're not just like making it up. But I mean, some of these accounts out there just like literally just make shit up.
Sure. But even if like let's just say the guys who aren't making it up, for example, they're doing really well. And that's fine. Like everybody's on Twitter partly to know what's happening, including me. I like to see the news. I like to see what's going on. But it feels like, okay, if you want to do good at Twitter now, this is kind of what you should do. You should just like read the news and then go write a little a neutral voice, neutral tone sort of summary of the story and post it. And that does like really well. And I do kind of feel like I don't want to chase that. I don't want to, just because, you know what I mean? So anyway, it is what it is. We'll see. It's always changing. So hopefully it gets better.
I mean, do you think Musk is responding to the pressure where, to some extent, the type of people who are running his advertising probably do want that? I mean, what they want is sort of Twitter or X, whatever, to be the place where you go to find out late breaking news, but you don't do it in an unacceptable way. You don't do it in a politically incorrect way. You just sort of like, this is what's happening. I mean, sometimes it feels like what Elon wants to do is he just wants to replace the mainstream media, not so much in terms of the arguments or the tone, but he just wants to like take their spot.
Audience. Yeah.
Yeah.
The audience. I do think that is happening. I don't know if you saw, there was this tweet. I forget what her name is. Some lady claimed to have an insider scoop from a Twitter insider about how there's a tier system. And this is all like coming from the advertisers, where if the advertisers don't like you, you're in a lower tier and you have lower reach and lower payouts. That all is like so plausible.
That rings very true.
Yeah. It just like tracks with what you see happening too. I just don't know how much money they actually make. Is like the advertising thing, it seems like kind of a dead end for Twitter, but I don't know. I have no idea what the numbers actually look like. But yeah, I'm sure there's some pressure in that regard.
Well, you also have the pressure from the UK and the EU now. I mean, they're trying to put together these new fines and these regulations, and you know they're sweating bullets about that kind of thing. I mean, where do you see that going?
Well, my biggest complaint about that is that there's obviously a lot of people who have been banned because of government pressure, which is like antithetical to Elon's stated mission. You have people like Mark Collette and Laura Towler in the UK. You have these guys like Joel Davis and Thomas Sewell in Australia. There's no way that they're not the result of like government pressure, backdoor pressure, because the governments like hate those guys of those countries.
Yeah, right.
They hate those guys, and they're not. Especially if you look at like people like Mark Collette, when you hear them talk, they're pretty like moderate sounding.
Yeah, right. Mark's been on this show. Yeah, Mark is a Amran. I mean,
yeah, he's not some psycho. So compared to some of the people in America who are allowed to have accounts, it just seems that pisses me off, because Elon's being two-faced about it. He's claiming like we stand up to and we'll like countersue them, and in some cases they do, but clearly in some cases they've just decided it's not worth the fight and they're just going to not let people have accounts.
Yeah, and eventually you see sort of the plot where they say, okay, well, these tech companies can only function as sort of a worldwide thing. Therefore, if we impose these fines, we impose these regulations, we force them into the choice of abandoning this market altogether.
Right.
Or basically having a global standard, which is antithetical to the American standard of free speech, but they'll put up with it because they want access to the EU. And then they'll say, well, you know, we're not actually violating the First Amendment because actually this is a private company and we're doing this voluntarily. And I think that's sort of like the end game where you see it all going. And of course, I think if the Democrats take over the White House again, you'll see some open coordination between a Democrat White House and the EU and the UK to sort of enforce this globally. I mean, to some extent, we already saw that under the Biden administration. We remember how bad things were back then.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. The Democrats would love to have us all banned 100%. And if they say, like, if the EU says we're going to like ban you from our market, like that's massive pressure. There was this YouTuber talking about how I took YouTube to court and I won. And I saw this tweet and I thought, oh, that's interesting. And then I read it, and it was like some like EU tribunal that has no jurisdiction. And like in his tweet, he's complaining about YouTube didn't give me back my channel, even though I won. And I was kind of, well, you didn't take him to court in California or whatever. You took him to like some EU, like made up kangaroo court. Like, I don't even blame YouTube, but if the EU wants to put real pressure behind those rulings and be like, look, you give this guy back his channel or you're banned in the EU, YouTube's probably going to just give the guy back his channel at that point. It's a question of how much pressure are these bodies willing to put.
Right. Well, where do you see the whole online right going? Because I think whatever like growth we were going to get at the restoration of free speech, like we've kind of gotten. And at this point, like you're not going to get that explosive hundreds of thousands of new followers in the short term that you got like initially. The boot's off our neck. This is about as good as we can get. At the same time, we do not have what we all took for granted in like, say, 2013. Like you're not going to be able to do the kind of stuff you used to be able to do on YouTube. You're not going to be able to post like whatever you want on Facebook or whatever else. I mean, you've got basically X with all its shortcomings is sort of the only game in town, and then like Rumble and things like that. But there's also kind of a downside to where the discussion on the right is going, which is that even though you're not chasing the algorithm, even though you're not chasing clickbait, a lot of people are. And a lot of the content that is being put out is not, it's not productive, and it's also just like not true. I mean, you're seeing like people have furious arguments about like incidents that never even occurred.
It was Charlie Kirk electrocuted.
Yes, exactly.
What are we doing, man? It's a tough one. People love conspiracy. They love that. What was that old newspaper? The
National Enquirer.
National Enquirer. That's been around forever. People just love it. YouTube went through this years and years ago where they were letting the algorithm feed people what they would engage with. They were kind of like, we want to maximize user retention minutes or whatever. And conspiracy stuff took over YouTube. This was like 10 years ago, whatever. And they kind of consciously were like, we got to do something about it. It's hard to blame them, because it's not really healthy or productive, but people love that stuff. So we're seeing like a repeat of history here now where the same thing is sort of happening. The people doing it are maybe a little bit more sophisticated, so they're not going to get like outright banned. They're not going to go full Alex Jones on it with the Sandy Hook stuff. But I think it's just another growing pain. I think a lot of people eventually are gonna sort of snap out of it and be like, "Oh, that was all bullshit." Like Bridget Macron is actually a woman, They're gonna feel kind of silly, and hopefully they're gonna learn a lesson from it.
Hopefully. I mean, you may have more optimism in human nature than I do.
I mean, my own conspiracy.
We all believe in some.
9/11. I kind of went through that myself for a few years, and you end up sort of embarrassing yourself when you talk to people about this. So that was kind of my arc, and hopefully that's how it goes for a lot of these people too.
That's an interesting point. I mean, people kind of go into these things, but you generally don't end up there forever. I mean, you kind of end up at a different place at the end of it. And it is a tough question because on the one hand, the liberals, the people who are talking about regulating the internet, they are right in the sense that there is such a thing as misinformation. They are right in the sense that there are ops from foreign governments or whatever. But of course, then what they mean by that is, and that's why it's a conspiracy theory to talk about the Great Replacement. And that's why it's a conspiracy theory to talk about racial differences in IQ. And that's why it's a conspiracy theory to talk about J6 or something like that. And it's like, but it's not. I mean, like, we all agree that literal fake news is a thing. It's just what they want to ban is like the actual news, like the actually objectively correct news.
In a weird, ironic way, the COVID thing, which was like a victory for conspiracy theorists in a lot of ways, was like a setback for not having to not having to deal with all the crazy stuff, because you had this thing where like, oh, conspiracy theories right again, like that turned into a meme, like, oh, you want to know what's true, listen, and like people like took that like seriously and not just as a meme. And so now it's like we're sort of re-going through that whole thing. But yeah, I think if you're like a sort of intelligent person, you're gonna when you go through this, I think you get somewhat immunized. Like that's how it feels for me. I remember my friend texting me and being like, "Man, have you checked out this Q drops, the QAnon?" This was like several years ago, right? And I was like, "What is Q?" He's like, "This, you got to look at it." And I looked it up, and I was like, "Okay, what have these guys predicted?" It's like, oh, and it took me like 5 minutes, and I was like, "Dude, this is all bullshit. You're wasting your time." And so I just hope people learn their lesson from that. I don't know if he ever did, that guy, but that stuff didn't go anywhere. At some point you have to take stock and be like, was this a huge distraction or was it actually productive in my life?
Yeah, and what's the end game of all of it? Because like if somebody says like, here's a conspiracy theory, this explains how the world works, like at some point there has to be some predictive power to that. And if it has no predictive power and it doesn't ultimately explain anything, then what are we doing? Like, why pay attention to any of it?
Yes. The Candace Owens thing is kind of an interesting one, though, because she has sort of opened up people's like minds to questioning Jewish power a lot. So I really have like mixed feelings about her. Like, I can't she's so dumb and she's just such a grifter, but she at the same time I do think she's been a little bit productive, at least in that area.
Well, it's sort of like with David Icke, if you're familiar with him, where it's like, okay, here are like the global elites, here's this conspiracy, here's how it works, and you're sitting there nodding along, and then it's like, and that's why they're all lizard people. And it's like, and you've lost me. And you kind of wonder about Candace Owens, where it's like, okay, I'm going to talk about this issue. This is stuff you don't know. Like I'm going behind the scenes with this kind of stuff. And then it sort of like mixes in this other stuff. And it's a tough question because on the one hand, you're like, okay, well, she's exposing people to these arguments. But at the same time, it's mixed in with all this crap that almost like discredits the larger thing.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, I'm not saying she's like a cynical op or that this is some elaborate plot. I think that she's just trying to get clickbait and money because that's like basically the theme of her entire life. If you look at how she started, maybe everybody forgets. I mean, she got her start doing an NAACP lawsuit against her school for being racist, and then wanted to do the doxing website against people like us.
Yeah, I think it's people should really consider that it does say something about a person's character when if she came out and was like, I'm really sorry, I made a lot of mistakes.
Right. Yeah. Right.
I haven't even done that, so.
Yeah, I would be inclined to like give her a pass on something like that. If there was like, hey, I didn't know any better. It was the first thing I did. Like, but I mean, there's never been an apology. There's never even been an acknowledgement that she did something wrong. So what are we doing here?
Unfortunately, she is the leader of the right now in terms of Queen Candace. In terms of,
we're so cooked. It's all over.
Yeah, it is. It really is. People are talking about President Candace Owens. People are actually talking about
what people are talking about President.
Somewhere on Twitter, I don't even remember who now that you say it.
I think I'd rather have it. No, I wouldn't go that far. I mean, the thing is, this is one of the consequences, I think, of Trump, is that in many ways you sort of rejoice that he crushed the old way of doing things. But you do have this kind of politics of personality and celebrity and everything else. But to a certain extent, it almost like doesn't matter like what you say. It's just a question of like whether your personal following and your charisma can carry you over it. And I think that's going to be politics going forward. And it goes both ways. I mean, so many of these people in Congress, I mean, God knows Congress just doesn't legislate anymore. I mean, as far as a constitutional body, it's basically useless. But these congressmen now, I mean, I think they think their job is basically just to be an influencer. Like you've got these, they want to be like us or something. Yeah. And it's insane.
Yeah, so sometimes the way JD Vance tweets sometimes is I'm kind of like so like he's like actually good at Twitter, but it's a little weird to look at that for a politician to be good at Twitter in that way. I think you're right about that. Everything is headed towards cults of personality, influencer type, charisma driven politics, and it's probably a really bad thing, really.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, people talk about like policy and, you know, occasionally, especially in this sphere, especially with like American Renaissance, you know, we'll bring people on and have, well, you know, welfare policy. And here's like this nuanced discussion of like statistics and everything else. And you almost get the impression now that you're just sort of talking to yourself, because like very few people even read at this point. I mean, certainly reading itself seems to be like a generational thing that people just don't do. Jared and myself are both people who like would rather read something than like watch a video, but that puts us in the minority.
Right.
And when you think of even something like memes, I've noticed that for especially the original alt-right, if you can call it that. I mean, that was basically a meme-driven movement. I mean, they're very dense in terms of the amount of information you get from a simple graphic. There's a lot of context and nuance that you pick up on only if you know the scene. I mean, that's what makes them so profound in some ways. Right. But even that like seems to be gone now. I mean, everything has to be like really short, fast-paced videos, but you still have to like tell everybody everything. You can no longer trust the audience to know context or nuance. If you don't tell them directly, they're just totally lost.
You're right. The shortification of the internet is something I really am. That's like I don't read that much. It's like this funny generation. Like I used to read a lot when I was younger, but I'm more of a video guy now. So it's funny. So there's kind of like, and I think we're probably about the same age. So it's not even really an age
42.
thing. Yeah, I'm 45, so I'm actually older.
Yeah.
But it's like so you got people who still like to read. They're like a tiny minority. You have people who like to watch long form video, listen to podcasts and stuff like that. And then you have the shorts, you know, this, and I hate that. I don't get it. The shorts thing, I don't, but it's like, that's what they want now. Everything's like Instagram, TikTok, shorts. And, yeah,
clearly that's what YouTube is trying to move into. I mean, you can almost see the calculation with the way the algorithm changes day by day. Like, you know, these YouTube executives are seeing TikTok eat their lunch and are saying, how do we get people into YouTube shorts? How do we get this kind of thing? But it doesn't seem to work. It seems like every kind of social media site really is wedded to only one particular form of media. And when they try to like spread into a different thing, it just never quite clicks somehow.
Yes. And they should just stick to what they know, you know.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. It's like Twitter trying to be a streaming website.
Yeah. And they even did that with Substack, right? I mean, you try to post like Substack and it becomes a disaster and everything gets suppressed and everything. It's like, well, don't try to be Substack. Let Substack be Substack.
Right. Yeah.
Well, how do you survive with something like this? Because obviously we've both been around for a long time in terms of like, we've seen where this movement was 15 years ago and where it is now. And obviously the media has, I mean, the one constant, ironically, throughout this entire time has basically just been Trump. We're still in the age of Trump. But the forms of media have changed. AI, of course, has changed the online environment in a lot of ways. The sorts of arguments that people bring up. I mean, when we had the live stream the other day, one of the things I thought was interesting is you had so many people there who were from like the old alt-right. And what was crazy to me, just looking back on it, especially talking about like Murdoch and things like that, was how it was precisely the hardest right people who were like the most pro-Trump back then.
Right.
Like, and the idea that Trump was like literally going to be a dictator. We were going to have like right-wing death squads, like marching through the streets. And like, this is, and the way you get that is like vote Donald Trump in the primary.
Yeah.
And like, and now you sort of have a different situation where the people who have been in it the longest, the people who have been, are the most hardcore, I guess you could say, are also the ones who have sort of given up the most on the political process. That like what we need to do now is sort of step back and let this thing collapse, which of course could happen. I mean, anything's possible, but it could also be a very dangerous proposition because, as I think we both recognize, that gets taken far enough, people like us just aren't going to be allowed online anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Or they're going to put us in jail. If they're going to go
for that too. Yeah.
You know, anything is possible. And I think, you know, the people you're talking about, the old alt-right, the old heads, we've understood it's always been about demographics. It's always been about what percentage of the country is white. Like it kind of boils down to fundamentally that. So this is why I talked about the Zoran Mamdani thing in my article, because you got this guy in a jurisdiction that's 30% white, and his platform is tax whitey explicitly.
Yeah,
and
right.
people were like, yeah, this guy's going to tax whitey and give us money. And if he gets elected, and if it was only white people voting, he wouldn't have got elected. So that I included that because I feel like it really spells out the importance of the demographic question. You can sit around and talk about policy all day and how much free speech and should we have gun control and whatever else.
Right. Yeah.
When white people are a minority, they are just going to want to take your stuff, man. So
yeah, it really is that simple.
Yeah. So it's not surprising that people who have seen the failure of Trump to deliver on that thing to be completely black-pilled. Because if you can't get that thing again, you're fucked.
Yeah.
So yeah, man.
Well, where do you think, what are some like more optimistic impressions about where the young right is now? Because I mean, one thing we didn't have, certainly not 20 years ago, is you didn't have like a mass constituency back then. Like I'd write columns for like Radix and stuff like that, and be working with like Richard Spencer and guys like that, and we'd be putting stuff out there. But you were just, I mean, I'm talking like 2012, 2013. Yeah. Like you're basically just kind of like talking to yourself. Like it was a big deal if some syndicated columnist that nobody had ever heard of like referred to you once. Like that meant you made it. Whereas now, you've got a mass audience. You're engaging with like the New York Times. Ramaswamy, like his New York Times column that you referred to. I mean, he even says in the column, like the reason I'm writing this is because Nick Fuentes and his followers are like calling me mean names on Twitter. So like that does show that like to some extent Twitter is real life. It does affect real politics.
Right.
So we matter now in a way, but at the same time, you still are not getting that translation into real power, into real policy victories, with a few exceptions, like stopping illegal immigration.
Yeah, right. So at the end of the day, and I'm sure you know this, I know this, you wake up and you fight. You fight and you fight and you just hope for the best. So as our ideas are more mainstream, that's undeniable. There's way more people who have come around, way more people who are less pearl clutchy about things like racism and stuff like that. So we just keep pushing and pushing, and hopefully we do start to see some kind of translation into political power. Hopefully there's like more real world organizing. I'm like chomping at the bit for Nick to do another AFPAC. I want to go to another AFPAC so bad. I hope he does it. I just want to
well, you were at the last one, right? The one
that was the first time
we were both there at that.
Yeah. And this is a funny little anecdote about that. So you're one of the keynote speakers, and I'm looking at the lineup. It's Vincent James, and then it's Jared Taylor, and then it's James Kirkpatrick. And I had never heard you before. I only knew you from Twitter. And I'm thinking, well, surely Jared Taylor should be the headliner. Like he should be the last guy out of the three. And then you gave your speech, and I was like, oh, I get it now. Like awesome speech, man.
Yeah, which my one regret, and I'm never letting this happen again, is because, as you recall, like they were shutting down the event, and so I handed it over real quick. I'm never doing that again. Like if it ever goes down, I'm finishing the thing come hell or high water, because like you can't show weakness, right? You can't you can't back down with any of this stuff.
Yeah, so for people who weren't there, you went hard in your speech, which was why they were shutting it.
Yeah, right.
Kind of like, damn, this guy's he's really saying it. So I really apprecited that.
Thanks. That was fun.
It was a shame that the main thing got canceled. Like it was a shame the way that played out. But I want to, in 2026, I'd love to do more stuff like that. Just get out and meet people in real life.
Yeah, I mean, that's partially why I think the American Renaissance Conference, why we do it every year, is like you kind of Because people will say things like, why have the conference? Why have any conferences? Why do anything like this? Because you can talk online, and this is like how you get the ideas spread and everything else. And it's like, well, first of all, we may not have this for as long as you think. I mean, I thought it was crazy and paranoid when people would talk in like 2010 about the internet being censored, or like you're not going to be able to sell the kind of books that you want. It's like, that will never happen. This is America. Well, 6 years later, that was all gone. So that's one. But the other thing is that until you sort of like deal with people in real life, it's pretty hard to actually get anything going. There's just something, and you know this from running Meme Page and all the stuff that you've done online over the years. There's just something about online communication which lends itself to like conflict that really doesn't mean, like, it's just very easy to hate people and start fights. And then when you meet them in real life, it's like, why are we fighting again? Like, everything's fine.
Yeah, and it's just sort of energizing and moralizing to be around people who share your views, and real like power happens in like backdoor rooms with guys drinking brandy and smoking cigars.
100%.
Like that whole meme, or like sitting around a dinner table. Like that's where real deals get made. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It doesn't happen on a live stream. So.
Yeah, right. On a live stream, if you have a really good idea for like a plot on a live stream, you better not say it, because now it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think that the whole, I guess this leads to the next point, is in many ways one of the most important things that's driving stuff right now, as everything is driven by streaming, as everything is driven by this sort of like online communication where everybody's chasing clickbait, everybody's chasing the algorithm. I mean, what is the number one way to get people interested in your streams? It's basically conflict, right? It's basically picking fights.
Yes.
And even, yesterday's collab becomes tomorrow's feud. And this just seems to be the nature of the beast. So in some sense, is that what's standing in our way? Because if the right is increasingly defined by streaming and the whole online culture that comes with it, how does that translate into winning political power?
Yes. So drama does get the most clicks and sell the most. And if you've ever engaged in that, it becomes like this high that you want to chase. You want to chase the dragon and do more drama and more drama. And you see people who go down that road, and it typically doesn't end well for them in the long run.
Typically it does not in the long run.
Right. So a sober, prudent approach is to really pick and choose your battles wisely, and go after ones that feel like they actually matter, and to not chase clicks. I mean, I don't know. Some people, like, I don't know if you know who Kino Casino is, even. They're
know
like
of him, yeah.
Right. So they do that. Their whole thing is that, and they're like super successful. And it's like, if you don't have an agenda, if all you care about is clicks and views, you like that can actually work out really well for apparently a sustainable amount of time. Right. But you don't accomplish anything that way. So for me, I'm trying to actually, if I can get one person a day watching where they sort of come away a little bit more racist, or however you want to put it, a little bit more identitarian, if you prefer. That to me is like, I have an agenda, and it's something like that. So to your question of like, is the live streaming a problem? I think yes. I think we're sort of currently just stuck with it, because to make video, I love to make edited videos. I've made some really, really good ones that are like timeless, that people from like years and years ago that people still come and watch today. And I think that's like way higher quality content than a live stream that 48 hours after it's done, it may as well not.
Yeah, right. I mean, that is one of the essential problems with it, is like, you do a live stream and it's like, was there even a point to doing this?
Yeah,
I mean, especially because like people are like listening to it in the background or something like that.
Yes.
It's not.
The problem is that time-wise, you can't make a living doing the edited videos. Like the way the market works, you're not, that you can only do that if you have like a real job, a day job, and then you're in the evening spending a week making a really good video. If you want to make a living doing this, you got to be a streamer, basically.
Yeah, more or less. Although, I mean, one thing, it's a little different than an edited video, but I mean, it's been pretty interesting to see the success that Emily Yukas had with the Will Stancil show, which was pretty amazing. Although, interestingly enough, notice she didn't get like the $10,000 payout from X. Instead, it went to like some guy.
Yeah, so she has success in terms of like social clout in the scene. Everybody loves it. You know, we all love it. It's great. I love Emily. And I don't think she's really making. She's she's getting donations. She is getting. I've donated to her. I'm sure other people have like sent her some money. So maybe she is doing well in that regard. But it's
not coming from like X directly though.
Right. It's sort of similar. Like the reason I do live streaming instead of videos is because I get super chats mainly. Basically.
Right. Yeah. That's
the market is like that. You have to be donation driven, and it's hard to just make, because people like to send super chats because they get that reaction from the streamer. If you're sending a donation to Emily, you're not really getting that, right? So it's hard. It's very hard to make content that is that good, that people love, that they're going to be like, here, take my money. But it is possible, as she demonstrates. You're right about that.
You still do the show, You Can't Stop Progress, right? Because I saw that was playing the other day. I mean, and that tends to be just like showing like the leftists going nuts. And in many ways, the sort of like anti-woke, I don't know, video streamer YouTube thing. I mean, we all think of like the person screaming no when Trump was inaugurated the first time. It started like the archetypal like example of it. I mean, people will say like, well, you know, it's been done. It's sort of played out. Like we've seen this a million times, but at the same time, like it really hasn't, because one, you never run out of material. And the other thing is, even though, you know, imagine the shoe was on the other foot sounds kind of lazy. I've found that tends to still be the only way you can get people to actually change their mind. Like showing somebody like saying something and saying like, look, this is what they really believe. Here's a guy saying like all white people should be killed. Like I'm not making it up. Like that kind of like reporting, if I can use that phrase, is actually useful and works.
Yeah, pointing out hypocrisy is underrated. I get why people are frustrated with that, but it actually does sort of appeal to normies. People who think they have principles, but they're maybe not super intellectual.
Yeah, right, exactly.
It does actually like work to a degree. I will say, like, You Can't Stop Progress. This is like my flagship series. I've been doing it for 10 years. The viewership's way down. I think people are bored of it. I used to have 3 times as many viewers like 6-7 years ago or 5 years ago. I'm still doing it for now just because there's like that core loyal fan base who would be really disappointed if I stop. But I don't plan to do it forever. I plan to go for like another. I think I just did episode 420. My plan is to try to get to 500, and then I'm gonna retire because I work 7 days a week currently when I'm not on vacation, and I'm tired of doing that too. So the easiest way for me to actually have some time off in the week is to stop doing that show. So that'll be like another, 80 episodes. That's like another year and a half, but I'm counting it down every week. I'm like one step closer to retirement, basically, Do
you think people are just sort of inoculated to how crazy the left has become? Like at this point, no matter what you see, some trainee doing God knows what, you're sort of like, well, okay, but I've seen this before.
I don't know. I don't know what it is. You talked about cults of personality. I think it's partly that. You don't get that from YCSP. People want to feel like they're throwing their weight behind a leader who's going somewhere. I think that sort of is a big explanatory factor in Nick's success.
Which 100%.
Of course I support. I'm glad he's been on a generational run. I love it. But it's like people want to feel like they are part of a movement, and anti-SJW videos are just not maybe doing that job well enough. And the series, it did change a lot because it's like I focus a lot on like like black crime and stuff. Like it's a lot edgier these days than just look at this crazy like left talk. But it's so repetitive. Every video you've seen in that show, you've seen it 100 times before at this point for me, you know what I mean? So it's just, it really is just the same thing over and over. And I think that's mostly why people have checked out. It's funny. So when I started, this was in peak anti-SJW YouTube. You'd have Sargon of Akkad watch some retard lefty and explain. And I was sitting there watching that and being like, why on earth would I need somebody to explain to me why this is retarded? It's so obviously retarded. What if I just like quick edit all the retardation together? And that was very popular for a while, but it's like we've gone full circle now to where it's like, I've seen so many of these videos, unless there's somebody adding commentary to make it interesting, what's the point?
No, that's a really interesting point. And also, I mean, you have other accounts kind of biting your shit, basically. I mean, what is libs of TikTok, right? I mean, it's the same sort of thing. Like, I mean, if you're looking for this kind of stuff, you just go to theirs. Like, here's like the last 7 videos of people freaking out, and then you post the reaction to the people freaking out, and that becomes content. But as you point out, I mean, the problem is that you end up in these news cycles that don't really go anywhere, because if I see a TikTok of a leftist freaking out, I got to say something about it that day, or else it doesn't really matter. And then within a day of that happening, it's really of no interest to anyone ever again.
Yes. Yeah, it's like you were saying with the streaming thing. Yeah, we're sort of trapped in this, you know, this 24
the eternal presence of like
ever diminishing news cycle that ends up not mattering 2 days later. And yeah, it's kind of rough, but it's like I said, if every day you're hitting one person, then you're doing something. If you're opening one, right, that's how I think about it. I try not to be like, what's the point of any of this? I try to, like, you know, every now and then you get a message from somebody like, hey, you really opened my eyes, or I stopped watching porn because of you, or I went back to church, or whatever it is. And for me, it's like, okay, this does matter. I am, you know, on the most fundamental level, I am reaching out and affecting people. So that's the goal. Just keep trying to do that.
Yeah, and it does. One of the more optimistic things I was told when I first started doing like political activism is that you're not going to see all the positive effects that you yourself have had. And when you see one of them, I mean, I can remember like specific people who went on to do something because I told them to do it. And then like 20 years later, something would happen and they would say like, you made me do that. And you're like, wow, well, how many other people were like that who you just don't know about? So, I mean, that's one thing. But the other thing too is that just because it's not new to you doesn't mean it's not new to somebody else.
Right.
Like you put out a video, like we've been doing this for 20 years or whatever it's been. I mean, at least I have. Whereas like somebody else, they may just be seeing this now. And whatever that leftist video is, that may be the first one that they've seen. They randomly got on. But if you hit them with something and that changes the trajectory, that's a pretty big impact to have.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, it's kind of like, I feel like it's for somebody like me. I'm never going to be like a senator or whatever. It's kind of like all I can do.
You never know.
Who knows? So that's what I focus on. Yeah, it's just trying to like change one mind at a time.
Well, this is kind of the last thing that I wanted to bring up, because obviously, I mean, you've had a tremendous impact over the years, and you're also, and this really struck me with the live stream the other day, one of the few who has like staying power. I mean, how many people have we seen in this thing who show up, make a big splash, start telling everybody what to do, and then a year later they're gone and you just never hear from them again. So it's just being in this and doing the work year after year after year after year speaks extremely well of you. But in terms of seizing political power, I mean, we are now at a point where the game has changed somewhat. I mean, the idea of Trump getting elected twice, 3 times, if you believe some people, that by itself tells you something. And now you have congressmen trying to be influencers, and influencers, especially on the Democrats, running to be congressmen. It does seem like the barriers to getting elected, to actually having your hand on the switch, seem to be gone. So are we going to be at a point where even the people who are considered to be too edgy now, too controversial, you could imagine those sorts of people getting elected, because on the left, I mean, this has already happened. I mean, you had Hassan Piker palling around with the next mayor of New York City. All the stuff that he said didn't seem to impact him.
I mean, that's the dream, is that like this sort of what we're talking about, where it's like our ideas are mainstream, but where's the political power? I do think, I think like, I talked about being blackpilled because of Trump's failure in that. I am optimistic in that regard because I do see how our ideas are winning out, how things are sort of headed in our direction. I think that's totally plausible. It's also totally plausible that we just get absolutely crushed in the next election and they like kill us all or whatever. But I wouldn't be doing this if I thought it was totally hopeless. I wouldn't be able to. I would just go like play video games and just be like, whatever.
Yeah, but we can't play our video games. They took our video games away. That's how all this started, remember? Yeah, exactly. If they had let us play our video games, none of us would be doing any of this.
So I do think, it's just hopefully when we get these like Groyper candidates or whatever we're going to call them, hopefully they're real and not just like cynically using us. Because you got this guy in Florida, which I'm not saying he is.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know his name, but this guy who's
Fishback or something like that. Fishbang, something
right.
Like that.
He's all like saying all these positive things about the Groyper.
And then you go back 2 years ago and you're like, wait a minute.
And he's glazing Barry Weiss and Bill Ackman. We got to watch out for people like that, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. Well, given the long road we've been on, I guess this will be the last question then. We're now, it's crazy to think, like my older boy is 15 and like he doesn't know a time when American politics wasn't dominated by Donald J. Trump. And I think one of the reasons, and maybe this is true of you as well, like being of a certain age, being of a certain generation, millennial or Gen X or whatever, you remember how bad things used to be. You remember like in college trying to get excited about like George W. Bush or something like that. And so Trump comes along and you're like, this is so much better than what came before. For younger people, it's like this is all they've known, so they're understandably impatient with this kind of stuff. We're now nearing the end of the age of Trump one way or another, just because there's nothing else he can do after this.
Trump 2028, baby.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, but this just shows I'm not like Q predicted that he will run again.
Yeah.
Put him on the golden throne of the White House. But what is the final takeaway for what Donald Trump has done? Because in many ways, we would not be where we are. In a lot of ways, we would not be where we are had he never come down that escalator.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's still an open question as to whether he's the thing sort of like holding us back, or when he's gone, are we going to like pray for him to come back because they're just going to go right back to Mitt Romney and George Bush?
Yeah. It's Trump. It's a paradox. He's a big disappointment in a lot of ways, but also we owe him a lot of gratitude for a lot of like what he's done. Optimistically speaking, Trump is hopefully a stepping stone to something even closer to an actual solution, a Caesar, whatever you want to call it. It's hard to imagine right now because you see 2028 getting closer and closer, and you're saying, well, who's the next guy? And I don't know, JD Vance, like Stephen Miller, like Tucker Carlson. People are saying like I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, and there's not really anything to be super excited about in that sort of short term. But in a more long term, I like to think we're eventually going to have another guy who is even closer to fixing the problems than Trump was, and eventually we're going to have Hitler 2.0, basically. A little bit of a joke, but you know what I mean.
It is pretty funny how like that was like also one of the themes in the New York Times article that Vivek was complaining about, like people saying like, oh, like, if you say something that's like that, it's like, dude, I mean, one of the biggest problems is they don't understand like online culture. They don't understand like this idea that like when you've got a whole generation that's never going to buy a house, that can't get a job, that just has like no hope for the future whatsoever, they really just don't care about your taboos. They just don't
Right,
care.
right.
And like guys like Vivek just do not get that. Or maybe he does. I mean, he may be more cynical than he lets on. I think he probably is.
Vivek seems like a smart guy. He seems like a smart guy, but he just seems like he's pandering to a 2016 audience in 2025, so to speak.
Yeah.
And in some ways, he has no choice because the
Right.
2025 audience is racist. they don't want to hear it.
That's right. Yeah. But if you believe that he really cares about America, I've got a Alzheimer drug to sell you.
Yeah. Yeah.
With that, I really appreciate you coming on and all the work that you've done over the years. I mean, I know sometimes it can be tough, but a lot of us see what you're doing, and a lot of us appreciate the work you've been doing day in, day out for a long, long time. Where can people find you, and how can people support you?
Thank you very much for the kind words. I really appreciate that. And I feel the exact same way about you. I've been following you on Twitter forever, and you're absolutely goated. Hypocrite on YouTube is sort of my main video place, and Rumble, of course, is where I don't do You Can't Stop Progress on YouTube. So if you want to check that out, find me on Rumble. I go by LP Original G as sort of my handle, so you can find me there on X, Rumble, YouTube. Those are sort of the main hubs. Yeah.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much for appearing on Identity Politics, and keep up the good work. And anything you need, you just let me know.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So I want to end with some news from Europe, from the motherland. Matteo Salvini in Italy has been acquitted by a court on charges of kidnapping. Now, he was like Interior Ministry at the time these things were brought up. How did he get charged with kidnapping, you might ask? He's a government official. Get this. He was charged because he blocked a boat run by an NGO that was trying to dump illegals into Italy. This case has been going on for 5 years. This is what I mean when you have governments who don't govern. That like fundamentally the NGOs and these unelected judges and bureaucrats are the ones with actual power. And yeah, he did win. He did win in the end. But the process is the punishment. How much time and money has been wasted? How many more migrants have been set loose in the mother continent to hurt our people and line the pockets of the NGOs? And even if you look at this case, he won by a kind of like technicality. So Breitbart reports, and it's worth looking into this, Italy's Supreme Court definitively acquitted Deputy Prime Minister Matteo Salvini over his blocking of an open borders NGO migrant boat that attempted to dump illegals into the country in 2019. After a 5-year legal battle, the case against Transport Minister Matteo Salvini is finally over after an appeal from Palermo prosecutors fell flat at the Court of Cassation in Rome on Wednesday. The Populist League leader, League is the name of the party, has been accused of kidnapping and of breaching international law over his decision as Interior Minister in 2019 to prevent the Spanish NGO Open Arms migrant boat from docking at the island of Lampedusa and disembarking 147 illegal migrants on Italian soil. For this supposed offense, prosecutors sought a 6-year prison sentence against Salvini. The deputy PM had been acquitted by the court of Palermo last December. However, the Sicilian prosecutors promptly launched an appeal to the Supreme Court. That's a hell of a system. You get acquitted and the prosecutors get to appeal. According to Il Giornale, Salvini's defense team successfully argued that because the NGO ship sailed under a Spanish flag and that the rescue of the illegal migrants occurred in Maltese waters, it was not the responsibility of the Italian government to take in the illegals. And therefore, he had not breached international regulations on asylum by blocking the ship from Italian ports. So here's the thing. It's a victory, yeah, but it's not a great victory. How did he win? Well, you see, like there was a Spanish flag and they were in Malta for some reason. So like you don't actually have to dump it on the Italian government. So therefore he doesn't have to go to jail for 6 years. But you know, the underlying international agreements about how anybody who shows up still gets asylum, that's all in place. The essential problem is that you have these legal obligations where non-show up, basically drop themselves in the ocean. And now it's Europe's problem forever. So, of course, the NGOs are just going to find a way around this. What is the actual solution? You have to break up the NGOs themselves. They need to be the ones on trial, not least for endangering these people's lives. Not that anybody actually cares about their lives. They're just biological weapons. But I mean, they're the ones bringing these Africans, having them like baiting them into crossing the ocean. And then you have like these catastrophes one after another. And more importantly, you have to repudiate these obligations, these international agreements to asylum of refugees, because this standard makes no sense in an age of easy transportation. We're not in the post-World War II era. And most of the time, what they're fleeing is just normal life in a non-white country. How do you automatically get asylum because you're non-white and you just don't want to live in your non-white country? What about we white people who don't want to live in non-white countries? Where are we supposed to go? And if that's enough to qualify for asylum or whatever else, we need to bring back colonialism, because clearly these countries cannot cut it as independent states. And the first thing they do when they get the opportunity is move to live under white rule. And the biggest thing of all, this is a challenge to the government of Giorgia Meloni. Like, Meloni is supposed to be heading up a right-wing government. You remember when she was elected? Oh, it's the return of fascism. Oh, she said nice things about Mussolini in her 20s. Oh, this is going to be the biggest thing ever. And all the conservatives were going nuts because she said something once about like being a mother and a Christian, and therefore she's based and is going to save us all. But we're not seeing the mass deportations. We're not seeing the naval blockade that was promised. It's just talk. Well, maybe there was a reason for that, because you had this thing hanging over their head. The case is over. And now you've got something you can work with. And Salvini is in many ways better than Meloni. He's free. He's liberated. He can do what he wants now. Now, I fundamentally believe that America and Europe have a common fate. And while the critical countries in the EU are going to be France and Germany, and where elections go there, Italy can lead the way. It's a core EU state. Politics is moving to the right. The time for excuses and moderation are over. It is time for action from Meloni. Italy is the front line, along with Spain, and Greece, for where these invaders are being moved into. So if not Italy, where? And if we can't save Rome, we're not going to save anything else. See you next time.